Good morning, Ellen and Lawson, and thank you for joining me for Give Me Five from Sherwood Forest this morning. That's where Robin Hood come from, wasn't it? It's lovely that you're joining me this morning. First of all, what motivated you both to take a service on your front yard, on your lawn? What motivated?
Well, a long story short, we've been working with the Anglican church in our village for a few months, and we'd started doing a contemporary service in our village hall. And of course, lockdown came and we had to stop and started praying, what next, Lord? And then Ellen showed me a Facebook film of an Anglican minister down in London called Pat Allerton, known as the Portable Vicar, and he was going around his parish with a loudspeaker, the gospel, and a short prayer, and he was just going around, and it was just absolutely incredible. People were coming to their windows, people that had never been to church before. It was incredible. So later on that day, we were walking the dog, and we bumped into the leader of the local parish council, and by then I've just kind of got this picture of doing a short service off our front garden to our local neighbours. We can see about 8 to 10 houses in front of us, and we thought maybe we could do something similar. And the lady said, "What a brilliant idea, yeah, go for it." So on Palm Sunday, we did our first service to our neighbours. We couldn't publicise it because that would have been causing a gathering. So we just let our neighbours know through a WhatsApp app and a couple of little flyers. And the neighbours came out and they started singing with us, and they heard the gospel. And haven't got enough time to share, but John got involved with us and encouraged us to use any of his material. And for 23 weeks, we did a Sunday night service at 7 o'clock, and we had between 14 and 20 people turn out every Sunday night. They'd stand at their garden gates or their fences or their hedges, and the common theme was always Amazing Grace, wasn't it?
Yeah,
we every night,
the
Lord's Prayer and Amazing Grace, and short recorded testimonies we played, and people loved it. We promoted Alpha, and we're hoping that when we get the village hall back, kind of 14 of those 20 aren't churchgoers.
Right.
So we're hoping that they will join us when we get back to the village hall. They'll join us on Alphas and things like that.
That's wonderful. I mean, when you think about it, you can see these people have really got something from what you have been doing, haven't they? That's wonderful. Now, Ellen, on Zoom, you said for a while you were held back, even by someone who was a Christian. Now, that seems a bit strange, because we should, as Christians, be spurring one another on, shouldn't we? In what ways do you think people hold us back?
Well, when I related that story, it was with regard to my mum. I had gone through a difficult time in my life, and I'd had a time of prayer with a pastor's wife and had an experience of God. And so when I then tried to share that with my mum, that didn't go down very well. My mum, who had been a Christian, I've been brought up in the church, Jeannie.
Yes.
And my whole family were church, went to church. But my mum didn't understand me going to another denomination, and she thought I was getting involved in a cult.
Right.
She just didn't understand. So it was a fear factor for her.
Of course.
So she was very fearful of what I was getting involved in. And of course, I was still living at home at the time, and I just felt I kept connected with the church that I'd I really felt I'd experienced God in a new way, but I'd stayed with my old church. And during that time I was with my old church, then I ended up in a relationship. I met a nice young man in the church, but he was a regular churchgoer, but he didn't understand what had happened to me. I know that my faith in God had changed. It was deeper. It was real. It was a relationship now, and I knew that something had really grown in me with my connection with God. And but that relationship went on for 4 years, and it just kept me away from. I felt as though I went on a big sort of belly out away from God, if you like, in that time. The relationship ran its course. It came to an end, and that was where I met. I'd stayed friends with Kim, but Kim had obviously, in the time that I hadn't been seeing her, and over those 4 years in particular, we hadn't been as friendly. Well, I say seen each other as much. And Kim she kept inviting me to come to this Tuesday fellowship, and I felt I couldn't go until this relationship ended. And eventually she asked me again, and I said, right, okay, I'm ready to come now. And that's when I reconnected again in a big way with God, because I was with Kim and with like-minded Christians who wanted to grow reading the Bible, fellowshipping, and doing things in the community for God.
Yeah, that's a lovely story, Ellen. That really is, you know. And Lawson, you're a policeman. Now, you examined the way of the Lord as a policeman, Lawson, and on a case. So tell us a bit more about that.
Well, my evidence was basically contained. I'm going to do a bit of a plug for a book now. Nicky Gumbel, Questions of Life, brilliant book. And this lady gave it to me 23 years ago to have a read of. And so, yes, and then back then I was a detective, and I started working my way through the book. I'd always believed that there was a God, but a white-haired, angry man with a stick. But I then started looking in this book at who Jesus was, who Jesus is. And the thing that blew me away was the evidence that was contained in the book. It was evidence I'd never seen before, and it just took my breath away. It was the evidence, for example, of contemporary historians then, people like Josephus, who was a Jewish historian. He's writing about Jesus in the first century, about Jesus, about this amazing man who's doing miracles. Because I had a feeling that maybe Jesus was a bit of a myth thing, but here were contemporary historians of the time writing about it. You've got Roman historians, Tacitus and Suetonius writing about it. And this kind of took my breath away. And then I looked in this book, the volume of early documentary evidence in the New Testament, you know, the Gospels, the writings of Paul, that were writing about Jesus, about his ministry, about his life, his death, his resurrection, within a few years of it happening. This wasn't like, and we've already mentioned Robin Hood, the Robin Hood myth, which develops over centuries. Yeah. People were writing about Jesus within years. They were writing about his ministry, his death and resurrection, and that blew me away as well. And then I started reading about what Jesus said about himself, and what he was saying about himself clearly showed that he was conscious of being a person whose identity was God.
Yes.
And that took my breath away. And then it was a fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecies. You know, so many, 300 plus testimonies. Jesus, you know, he brings them home. With his life, death and resurrection. It was amazing that his teachings centered around him. And then you've got obviously the signs and miracles that are documented in the Gospels.
Of course.
Again, more and more evidence. And you start thinking, well, is it made up? And you think, well, no, a lot of the miracles, it's named people. It's named people in history that are concerned in it. Even in Jesus' death, you've got people like Pontius Pilate who are named in history. You've got the head priests, the Pharisees. They are named people who existed in history. If it wasn't true, people would soon be outing it as a lie, as false news, as they say today.
Yeah.
And then you've got that incredible love that he has for the lost, the marginalized. You think, only God. And then you've got the death and the resurrection. And I was looking at that, as a detective, I was looking at what the eyewitnesses were saying. Were their stories credible? And the fact is that because their stories didn't match up totally word for word, as they never do in real life crime incidences, as a detective, if stories match up word for word, you think, no, people have got together and falsified this before they've actually published the story or given their story. And you've got things like, you've got the fact that you've got women back in the first century who were the first people to see Jesus alive after the resurrection.
That's right.
This was their first witness. In those days, sadly, women didn't have that credibility. If you were making the story up, you would not have had women as the first witnesses to Jesus' resurrection. It would have been a man. So, they're telling the truth. You've also got as well in the Gospels the fallibility of the apostles, the fact that they're big enough to admit to their mistakes.
Yes.
Like Peter. Peter denial of Jesus.
Yes, that's right.
How terrible would that be? If they were making the story up, the story would be, hey, we're real tough guys, we never get anything wrong, sort of thing. But no, they were fallible. They were fallible men and women, and they admitted to their fallibility in the Gospels. And I think the last bit of evidence always is the changed life.
Yes.
The number of changed lives that I've seen over the years myself have been absolutely incredible. Gangsters, drug addicts, people whose lives have just been totally turned around as a result of encountering the risen Jesus today.
Yeah,
there's my evidence. That's what blew me away as a detective.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's such a fantastic story. It really is, Lawson. And you can see, that you've seen lives change. That's a wonderful thing. Now, Ellen, you are a mature Christian. You've known the Lord for many years. Do you feel that you're still growing as a Christian?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, Jeannie. I was just saying this to Lawson this morning. I feel as though I'm just scratching the surface of what there is, of God to learn. We are, aren't we? We know so little, and yet we've had a life of experience of God doing amazing things in our life, and yet I feel as though I'm just scratching the surface. And scratching the surface with regard to knowing God as well, and going deeper with Him. I do a daily Bible study, and I know that if I don't take time to do that every morning, I know that my day, it just doesn't go the same.
Right.
I just don't feel as connected. I don't feel as at peace. I know that there is a supernatural element to connecting with God in the morning that carries me through the day and equips me.
Yeah.
And I'm just getting to know God in that way every day. It's it's a new, isn't it? It's something new. I think of that song, Your mercies are new every morning. And they don't carry over from one day to the next. I can't say, well, I got well fed yesterday, so that'll carry me over to today. I know I need to get up and feed every morning.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Yeah, and it's understanding as well that I'm not in, God hasn't got me just for me. It's not just, He loves me, and He wants me to connect with Him, and He wants me to grow, and He wants me to know the fullness of His love and the depth of His love for me, but He wants me then to impart that to others. So it's never just about me. It's about, I've got to stay connected. The seriousness of it is to connect other people, with God, to guide them to God. So for me, it's really about, I've got to stay well fed in order to stay on fire for God, to tell others about Jesus, and to keep that fire going, to sort of impart God's love to other people and draw other people in.
That's wonderful, Ellen. So can you both tell me then a little bit about your drop-in centre?
Well, I started working with the addicts and the guys on the streets when I was an operational detective.
Okay.
I just felt it was answered prayer. I asked God after about 2 years of being a Christian, Lord, what do you want me to do for you? And basically over a period of time, the Lord said, I want you to minister to the guys that you're actually locking up. And so I did. Amazingly, work allowed me to do that. And then after about 2 years, we both felt that, I mean, I was encountering the guys usually in the police cells, and we felt that the Lord wanted us to actually reach out to the guys on their turf. So we started a drop-in in 2003.
Right.
Putting food on for the guys in the street, the addicts, the homeless, the marginalised. And we did that for 15 years. And in that time as well, we started doing church services for them. We called that street church as well. And we saw guys coming to know the Lord, going off to Christian rehabs and changing their lives quite dramatically. And it's been a real honour and privilege to be involved in that. And about just over 2 years ago, we actually handed that drop-in over to the church that where we were holding the drop-in, and we handed it over to them. Then there was then a transition period. I stayed on with the drop-in, helping the minister that was running the church run the drop-in, and really everything suddenly came to halt early this year.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, sadly, the drop-in is shut at the moment, but God knows. But it was an awesome privilege, wasn't it? For 15 years, seeing lives transformed by the gospel. Absolutely incredible.
It's changed lives, Jeannie. That's the privilege, isn't it? Seeing change lives.
Yeah.
And we've had that privilege. And it is very humbling that God has used us in that. And it was never just us running the drop-in. No. We were part of a big team.
Yes.
And I do think that, God, He called us to do it, but then there were people waiting around who were wanting to get involved in something like the drop-in. And it was amazing. We never had to recruit. There were always people who wanted to get involved and do that work.
Resources always came in. Local food manufacturers provided us with food. People provided us with money to run it. And it allowed me, that provision of God allowed me to retire early from the police and go full-time ministry, unpaid, but supported through God's provision.
That's wonderful. Really wonderful stories this morning, true stories of what the Lord has been doing and doing in your lives. And may God bless you both as you continue to serve Him. I can see that you've both got big heart for Jesus, and I can see that the Lord is blessing you as you serve Him, and you've seen many lives changed. And that's a wonderful thing, because we know that the Lord does change lives this morning. So thank you for joining me. There's one thing left for it. Please give me 5. Yay. Thank you, Ellen and Lawson, for joining me. It's been a real privilege this morning to interview you. It's been an absorbing interview, actually, and I really have enjoyed this interview. God bless you both as you serve Him. God bless.
God bless. Bye.